Hey guys, it's Keith here, and also Richard from Lullerman. Richard is a total expert at Lullerman. He's the one that basically advises a lot of breweries on how to get the most out of yeast, and he's a real professional. So to have him on the set to do one of our 15-minute boil kits is kind of exciting. When's the last time you did an extract brew, Richard? Probably a little while ago.
Yeah, it's a little while ago outside of preparing propagation media, I think. So yeah, it's been a while. It's good to get back to the basics.
Yeah, totally. And essentially what we're doing is a 15-minute boil kit. This one's called the Aussie Draught Bush Basher. So essentially what it's supposed to be is the type of beer which is going to emulate something like VB, Carlton Draught, your typical kind of like Australian pale ale, I suppose, sort of reasonable amount of bitterness, not a lot of hop aroma, pretty clean. And with this one, we're pairing it up with the Nottingham. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the Nottingham yeast and why this might be a good choice?
Nottingham is one of our workhorse, very versatile, one of our original dried yeast strains as well. Great thing with Nottingham is it has a very neutral flavour profile, so it can be used in a wide variety of beer styles and at a wide variety of temperatures as well. So it's great for doing these extract kits or these low boil kits. So yeah, great versatility in there.
Yep. Okay, so it's a really, really simple process. Essentially, all we're doing is we've got this water here, which is heated up to 70 degrees Celsius, and then we're just going to steep some grains in here, drop some grains in each one of these. Now, what we're doing today is we're actually going to get this one kit, and we're going to do a bit of an experiment as well. So, this kit typically would only come with half a kilo of grain, but we thought, look, let's just have a bit of fun and then just experiment with two different grain types. So we're going to split this kit in half and do two 10-litre batches. And we're going to use the Barrett Burson ale malts in one of them, and we're going to use Crystal in another one, because a lot of people getting into brewing, I know 10 years ago Crystal was used a lot in brewing, and probably, if anything, maybe overused a little bit. What I'd like to do is actually compare the difference of this one recipe, trying Crystal and ale malt, and see if we can compare them. But it's kind of funny, but I think now recently we've gone almost the other direction. You don't see Crystal used really at all. So
no, not unless it's an English bitter or a brown ale or something like that. But yeah, it's certainly not as popular as it used to be. But it's great to see you experimenting to come back.
Yeah, and I think, look, maybe an Aussie draft, it could be quite good in this type of recipe where, look, it's not one of the New World sort of recipes or NEPAs or pale, the really dry beers we're trying to chase. So, a little bit of residual sweetness coming over to Crystal in a beer like this, I think could actually work out pretty well. With respect to the Nottingham yeast as well, how do you feel that customers can sort of tweak the knobs a little bit to get more or less out of this one? And also, if they wanted to use a different yeast like Bry 97, if they wanted to sort of play around with the stock recipe and just switch it up a bit, how would they get sort of different results?
For sure. I mean, one of the big things is temperature. So if you got, say, summertime and the ambient temperature and the water temperature that you use to cool these down at the end is a little bit higher, Nottingham ale yeast will happily ferment over those warmer temperatures. It might give you a bit more of a fruity character to it as well. However, wintertime, as we are now, lower ambient temperatures is probably the fermentation is not going to be so warm. Also, the water that you're using is a bit cooler. Down at that level, very, very clean, very neutral base. So certainly playing with the temperature can give you a much different flavour profile. If you're using something like BRY, a bit more of an American influenced yeast, so we'll accentuate any hop that's in the product. Again, very versatile in that respect, and a little bit of tweaking with temperature to get a little bit more ester out of it would certainly give you a good starting point to play with.
Yep, nice one. So probably, if you want a really clean sort of beer, then maybe sort of in the high teens, sort of 18 degrees or something like that for the Nottingham. But if you want to sort of tweak it up, get some of those fruity esters, maybe pushing it up above the 20 degrees, sort of as high as maybe
anything up to 25.
25,
yeah, absolutely.
Yep, that's it. Nice one. So ultimately, the Nottingham is a real beast. So if you guys are sort of watching this, just getting into home brewing, you'll find that this is one of those yeasts that just will reliably get the job done, across the board, give really clean results. Which is why I want to put in one of these sort of starter kits, I suppose, the 15-minute boil kits, because it's just so easy to use. And even if you didn't have really great, access to temp control, it still reliably is going to get the job done. So really good one. But hopefully this type of 15-minute boil kit gets people away from, just the cans of extract and gets them onto something look a little bit more complicated, but it will give you much better results because we're boiling up some fresh hops here and obviously using, some really good malt extract in this one as well.
Absolutely, you've got the option to play around a bit if your interest peaks,
Yep.
you know, and it's a very simple substitute to change a yeast or change a hop and see what the results are like.
Yep, nice one. All right, so we're going to drop these grains in here and then give it a bit of a stir. And so I'm dropping the pale ale malt into this one, and then we've got the crystal malt, which is just dropping into this one over here and giving it a bit of a stir. And then we're going to come back in half an hour and then see what they're like. Okay, so it's been half an hour, so we're basically going to take these steeping grains out. We've got a glove each, so we're going to get in here and get these out of here. If you give them a bit of a squeeze, you'll get a little bit more of that flavour out of the bag, I guess. Alrighty, now we're just going to crank up the power and get to a boil. And once we're up at a boil, we are going to start chucking in the hops. So look, we're just going to come back in about 5 minutes once these get up to temperature, and we'll take it from there. We're just about to hit a boil. To be honest with you, it's actually possible to chuck the dry malt extract in before you start heating up, but like we're now hitting a boil and we forgot to chuck it in before, but not a big deal. Like these types of things, they dissolve really easily. So we're going to chuck, because we're splitting this batch in half, we're going to chuck 1 kilo of dry malt extract in each one of these. So I've got that one there gone in. And then we've got this beer enhancer bag where we're going to split it 50-50 between Richard and myself. So he's got that one. I'm just going to chuck in like half of this bag, and Richard's going to take the other half. It's a little bit approximate here. Probably if you had scales, this would be a really good controlled experiment, but like I think you know, we're just going to kind of wing it a little bit, I guess. Now it does sort of lump up a little bit, but I wouldn't sweat it. Don't have to sort of, you know, really stress about getting all the lumps out, because like within 15 minutes that will all dissolve pretty easily, because you know, all these products are really sort of soluble. I've also mixed these pellets together, then split them up to sort of half a bag each. So we've got 25 grams each of these hops. So we're going to chuck them in. And really what we need to do is now start that timer. So now that we're pretty much at 100 degrees, this is going to be isomerizing straight away. So we're going to set a 15-minute timer to basically make sure we get the right level of bitterness out of these hops. And then we're going to come back in a few moments. Is there anything else you want to mention about hops at all in particular?
I mean, you can, yeah, I mean, obviously with, you know, playing with different varieties to get a bit of different flavour compound in there. So whether you want a bit of tropical or a bit of citrus or something like that. Yeah, the world's your oyster to play with.
Yeah.
Probably only something else we'd mention while we're at this stage would be if, you know, if you wanted to do a stronger beer, like you weren't necessarily putting in as much water and you wanted a bit more alcohol out of it. And also in the interest of like getting a good fermentation yeast health, you could chuck in some nutrient in there, something like some Servomyces, just to give the yeast a bit of a boost. And not essential, but could just sort of help you in certain situations.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, when we come back, I'm going to grab the Servomyces. You're going to chuck a tablet in each one of these. It's good, like insurance policy, having some yeast nutrient in there. Even though, like generally, you know, we could probably get away with it. We are using actually RO water in here as well, and Melbourne water in particular, and RO water is very, very low in calcium in particular. So, you know, the yeast will struggle a little bit unless we add a little bit in there. Because one thing is, if you add a bit of yeast nutrient and have a really healthy fermentation, it does help with flocculation as well. Would that be fair to say, Richard? So
yep, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the zinc component, particularly in Servomyces, will help with flocculation of the yeast, and also ensure that you're not going to get any off flavors, something like acetaldehyde, so like a green apple, which can occur if there's a bit of stress in the fermentation. So yeah, it just helps those two things in particular.
Yep. Nice one. So if you've ever, I remember definitely when I first started brewing a long time ago, I noticed I would struggle sometimes with, that clarification process. Some beers would clear up really well, and then some beers I'd struggle a little bit with, and then almost instantly before, when I started adding things like, calcium and yeast nutrient, it basically would just improve my results.
Yep.
Yeah, and those beers would just clear out. Look, in a hazy beer, probably not a massive deal if you've got a little bit of haze in there, but this one, we do really want this one to clear out and be a crystal clear beer at the end if we can. All right, we'll come back in a few moments and then we'll start chilling this down. Okay, so I'll quickly run off to the cool room and got some of the Servomyces here. So we're going to get a couple of tablets, and that one's for you, Richard.
Thank you.
And this one's for me. I must say, the Servomyces are really handy. I do like the blister pack. It's good for when you're really lazy, can't be bothered weighing anything out, you just chuck a little tablet in. All right, so that's it. We're gonna let this boil for another 7 minutes or so, and then we're gonna start cooling it down. Okay, that's 15-minute boil, so we want to cool this down as quickly as possible. I've sanitized some jugs, and I've actually got a little bit of ice water and filtered water in here. Now, this is obviously, it hasn't been boiled, but it's been filtered, so it should be okay. And because we're going to be pitching the yeast pretty quickly, then, you know, that small amount of microbial, you know, that I'm going to have like in the water shouldn't be too much of an issue. The main thing is we want to cool it down quickly so we stop that hops from over-bittering the wort as well. So, yeah, so we're going to start, you know, being careful with sanitation. I actually even sanitize my hands just in case with some of the ethanol spray before. But that, I'm sure, is cooling down real quick now. And once we're getting sort of sub about 30 degrees, then it's cool enough to go in our PET all-rounder fermenters. So yeah, we'll come back in a few moments once this cools down a little bit more and chuck it in the fermenters and put some yeast on top. Alrighty, so the wort has got down to about 20 degrees. It's kind of close enough, so we're going to basically get this into the respective fermenters. Now today we're going to use the all-rounder fermenters. Because we've got a little bit of extra headspace, because I'm only putting 10 litres in the fermenter, I thought, look, I won't use the flat bottom today, because the all-rounder, you know, it's a little easier to keep the oxygen off it, especially if you've got quite a bit of headspace in there. So yeah, I'm going to chuck it in these. I might even carbonate at the end in these, and we'll taste it straight out of the fermenter. It'll save us a few steps as well, you know, instead of having to bottle a whole lot later on or put it in keg. So what we're going to do is take these lids off. Richard, you're going to basically look after that bad boy, and I'm going to look after this one. And you're kind of lucky. You're using the DigiBoil today, so you just got to tap. So you've got it real easy. While I've actually sanitized this jug in this big bucket of Stella Sand sanitizer here, and I'm just going to basically, you know, jug mine across. I could lift up the entire pot and just pour it in, but I don't trust myself. I reckon I'm going to drop it on camera and then look like a real goose. So I'm just going to do this. At least for the first few jugs. Once I get down to a few litres, I might just pour the whole pot in. But
pretty fine for, you know, even getting right down to, I reckon with that whole pack of 11 grams in 10 litres, that's, you know, grams per litre. I reckon, Richard, well, I reckon even like it sort of like, you know, 14 degrees. Probably right. Yeah, absolutely, like 10, 14 degrees, yeah, it would be almost ideal. Yep. Alright, so that is it for that bad boy. I think Richard's done slightly better job of avoiding getting too much hops in the fermenter. I've got a little bit more hot material in mine, but anyway, we're just going to kind of deal with that. Also taken the gravity reading too, and we're kind of bang on just a fraction under 1050, and this was taken out of the one with the crystal, so I'm going to do a taste as well. And look, it's pretty sweet. Yeah,
all right, so that's it there. And I've kind of beaten Richard, so I'm going to start chucking my yeast in. He might have to close the tap off, maybe pour to get the last little bit out. Do you want a hand pouring like tipping the whole DigiBoil over? What do you reckon? Or is it enough getting out of there?
Yeah, just trying to avoid some of the hop that's in the bottom. I think that might be good enough.
Okay. Now, this is like double the amount of yeast really necessary if we're fermenting at 18 degrees Celsius. But look, you could ferment actually really low with such a large amount of yeast. So even if you did this middle of winter, this type of pitch rate would actually be perfectly fine for, you know, even getting down to, I reckon with that whole pack of 11 grams in 10 litres, that's, you know, gram per litre. I reckon, Richard, what do you reckon? That would, even like at sort of like, you know, 14 degrees, would probably be all right.
Yeah, absolutely, like 10, 14 degrees, it would be almost ideal.
Yep. All right, so that is it for that bad boy. I must say, I think Richard's done a slightly better job at avoiding getting too much hops in the fermenter. I've got a little bit more hop material in mine, but anyway, we're just going to kind of deal with that. We've also taken a gravity reading too, and we're kind of bang on just a fraction under 1050, and this was taken out of the one with the crystal, so I'm going to have a bit of a taste as well. And look, it tastes pretty sweet. Yeah, I mean, I reckon you definitely can taste the crystal in there. It's got a slight kind of aroma to the crystal, which is sort of noticeable. I'm also going to chuck a couple pills in there to keep track of the fermentation as well. So I'm going to chuck this one in this guy down here. And then I'm also going to put this other one in the other fermenter. All right. There we go. Beauty. All right, so that is all done. And how long do you reckon that's going to take, Richard? We're going to try to aim for those sort of high teen kind of temperatures.
Yeah, so we're going to probably aim for about a couple of weeks until fermentation is complete. You'll probably find that fermentation will be actually a lot faster than that, but just need to give it time to clean up and for the yeast to drop out, I think a couple of weeks, and we'll be back to taste.
Yeah, nice one. All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we'll see what the results are like. All right, so we're back again, and time to do the tasting, moment of truth, as you'd say. So we've got two of the Bush Basher Pale Ales here. As you would remember, we've got one with the ale malts, the Barrett Burston Ale, and then we've got one with crystal. Now, we use the medium crystal. Sometimes I wonder if we could have gone with a light crystal as well, but anyway, that's what it is. So we're going to pour these out and have a bit of a taste. Now, we only probably could give it a slightly more carbonation in this one, to be honest with you. But that's the crystal one there, so I'm going to pour you a glass.
Thank you.
Now, I was going to put these and dispense them direct from fermenter, but Brady kind of wanted to clear up the brewing room we have here. So, yeah, he was nice enough to transfer these into 4-litre oxybar kegs for us. This one's got a little bit more carbonation. Oh, look at that. Automatically, you can see the colour difference. So that's definitely the crystal, even though we used a fairly small amount, like only a few hundred grams, you can see the difference in colour is quite substantial.
Yep, absolutely. It's got like a beautiful sort of orange colour to it for the crystal. And a much paler.
They did clarify pretty well. That's one kind of not bad thing about Nottingham. It does seem to clarify.
It flocculates really well, and once the fermentation's over, then it flocculates out very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It can leave you with a really nice, clear beer. Obviously, we've the process of kegging and moving things around is shaking it up a little bit.
So I'm sure it would be a bit clearer had we not shaken those fermenters before it got transferred in the 4 litres, but like a little bit of yeast got kicked up there. But like generally, this is a really, really good flocculating beer.
Yep. Should we go first, the Barrett Burston?
Yeah, the Barrett Burston.
Definitely get a bit more of there's like a really light but pleasant caramel on the crystal one. It's just adds a bit of an extra dimension without being overbearingly sweet or like making it too rich or anything like that. It's just like a really pleasant.
I get slightly more ester production off the BB ale. I don't know if that's because it's more higher in esters or if it's more so that the crystal, it basically maybe masks a tiny bit of that ester production.
It could well be. I mean, Nottingham is, it's predominantly neutral in flavour, but you do get that little bit of ester production. Certainly it gives a good base for any malt or hop expression on there. So it certainly could be that crystal is just able to come to the fore a little bit more. Whereas the Barrett Burston, it's just a really nice, subtle, sort of almost like creamy, biscuity sort of malt, which is very pleasant, very, very easy drinking. So.
Definitely. I've generally been really happy with the Barrett Burston malts. I use them a lot in the all grain recipes I use for base malts now. I feel like for bang for buck, they're one of the best value base malts going around.
They are very, very easy drinking. Both of them very clean. You've just got that nice little bit of expression from the crystal malt. It certainly sort of highlights the flexibility with this recipe, right? If you wanted to put a little bit of a different crystal in or a different spec malt, you would allow that to shine through. Or if you wanted to play with a bit of hop or something like that, it would really allow it to come through. So if that, the base beer, having the base recipe, and you've got a very easy drinking, sessionable pale ale, very, as expected in terms of that sort of Aussie pale ale. But then if you wanted to have a little bit of an experiment to kind of liven up the character, then it's certainly a good base to do that.
Yeah. I tend to actually think I personally think I prefer the crystal a little more for me anyway. Like I would say if I was going to do this one again, I reckon the crystal and then maybe go for a touch lighter crystal.
Do a crystal or a caramel or something that's a little bit lighter. You almost been halfway between the two of them.
Halfway between. I think the Barrett Burston ale malts, I'm always going to say It's really quite clean. I did say ester, but that's very, very slight. It's extreme. It's not. I wouldn't say a lot of ester production at all. It's really super clean. But I'm trying to detect something which be very sensitive to what's in here, because this is really not. It's quite clean and
probably describe it as a very light English fruity ale yeast kind of character, but it's certainly not not overbearing or not overpowering. And yeah, if you were to play with the with the crystal or a bit of hop, then you certainly probably wouldn't notice it. But with the very clean, it's it adds a nice extra dimension to it.
I don't get any real sweetness from the crystal, I should say. I would say both of these taste quite dry. Maybe ever so slightly sweeter on the crystal, but it's still, both of them I would put in the dry category, relatively dry category. And probably that's, Nottingham is just such an aggressive beast.
That's right. I mean, they're both fermented out to a very similar degree. So in terms of actual sweetness, in terms of sugar, they're both exactly the same. Whether you just get that perception from that caramelized malt character, is just getting a little touch of sweetness. But it's certainly not thick or cloying or chewy or anything like that. So it's a really nice little addition there.
But which one do you prefer?
I think probably I would similarly agree in terms of I would probably go somewhere in the middle. I like the very clean Barrett Burston ale malt version, where it's it's very, very, very approachable particularly as a summer Aussie pale ale, and something sit in your garden and get a couple of those. It would be very very, very enjoyable. Probably with the crystal, maybe it's more this time of year. This is what the winter time, and you've got a little bit more substance to it. But I think probably somewhere in the middle.
I tend to think so. Yeah, I'm sort of tending to I think the crystal's really good, but I think maybe we might tweak the recipe even slightly. Either tweak the amount of crystal down or go a lighter crystal, because I feel like just the roastedness of the crystal is kind of coming in a little bit too much for what I would normally say an Aussie pale ale should be. So I think we could tweak this recipe a little bit. I'm going to have a chat to Daz about it and see if we can maybe do some small tweaks here.
I mean, certainly if you were looking at a style for an Aussie pale ale, you can have that bit of crystal in there, and it's a little touch of caramel.
Yep.
It certainly can be in there, but it's just finding that nice sweet spot where it works well.
Yeah. But overall, I would say, miles better than any sort of extract can kit without, boiling fresh hops or adding any malts at all. I think the thing I like about these kits is they're still so easy. You can modify it, you can mix up the steeping grains that you're using, and you're getting a fair way into the process of learning how to brew all grain, but you're sort of really making it simple and, keeping the kits as simple as possible, I suppose. While still getting a level of control with the recipe, rather than just pouring in a can of goo and then putting some water in. So all right, well, thanks so much for that, Richard. We are going to put some further notes up on the website as well. If you've got any other questions, put them down in the comments below, and if I can't answer them, if there are any complex yeast questions, I'll forward them off to Richard. But I'd love to get your comments if you've got anything, or you want us to try out another recipe, or you think there's another 15-minute boil kit we should do, just let us know. The other thing is sign up to the Facebook group, the Kegland Homebrew Community Group, and then also subscribe to the video, bottom right-hand corner, hit subscribe now, and that way you get notified on all the new videos we bring out. All right, thanks so much for that. And Richard, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Always good to have you. I love bringing you in, and every time you come in, I learn so much more about the products and the Nottingham Yeast as well.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Thanks.